Maybe you just got yourself a new shiny iPhone 16 and you're wondering what best controller to pair it with. We're going to look at 15 plus different controllers that you can use with your new iPhone to get the best gaming experience possible. In today's video, all the controllers I'll show you, I can guarantee that they work, that I have tested them. We're looking at a convenient solution where you don't have to put your phone on tabletop mode, for example. You're just going to connect the controller to your phone. Game Tech Talk is a channel that specializes on anything tech that is gaming related. And let's start with the video. So let's start with one of the newest on the market, the X3 Pro. Now this controller works wired and it spoofs as a PlayStation controller. For that reason, it's going to work on your iPhone 15, your iPhone 16. And just to show you, this is what it looks like on a Pro Max phone. And this is what it looks like on a Pro phone. As you may have noticed, there are no LEDs coming up, and the reason is the USB-C does not protrude a lot. It doesn't really work with a case. However, it has a lot of features, so if you keep your phone without a case, it's probably one of the better options you can get. So let's start with the things that you could potentially want that are not there. It doesn't have analog triggers, and that's pretty much it, honestly. It has Hall effect sticks, it has swappable buttons, you can use gyro, it has rumble, it has software support so you can tweak it. And one of the very important thing when it comes to long exposure gaming is it has a fan. So whenever you connect it on your USB-C, it will charge your iPhone. You can connect a 3.5mm jack headphone, but it will also power this fan to keep your phone cool. And it's not just a fan. There's actually what we call a Peltier cooler in the back. And what this does is this becomes extremely cold and it absorbs heat. So it's really going to pull the temperature away from your phone. Now, usually you want to use these without a case anyways, but we're starting to see cases on the market that are designed to pull heat. That could have been paired nicely with one of those cases. Unfortunately, it just doesn't work with a case. It also has a pivot USB-C. Honestly, it's extremely complete in terms of features, and the software is extremely good. You can map your gyro to your right stick, so if you want to play Call of Duty Warzone and be able to move your controller to move your aiming, you can do that. There's not a whole lot of controllers on the market that does this, and this is one of the very few ones that do. You'll notice here that it sinks a little deeper, and that's for what is probably one of the greater compatibility in terms of camera bumps. When your phone is in the controller, now you may not see it here, and right now it's touching the bump, but what I can actually do is I can move this to the other side, and all of a sudden, there you go, my bump is no longer an issue. Now of course the case is, but the camera bump itself will not be an issue with this controller because you can move the center portion to adapt to your phone. It's probably one of the only, if not the only controller I've seen do that. So that's a positive aspect. I haven't reviewed that one yet. It's coming very shortly. So if you're interested in a full review that completely covers this controller, stay tuned as it's coming in the next couple of days, maybe a week. Moving on, if you have been looking into telescopic controllers at all, it's pretty much a guarantee that you've seen this one, the Galileo G8. Super awesome controller. There is one fairly major caveat, but if you don't mind that, everything else is pretty great. Here what you have in terms of ergonomics is basically a console-like controller. Now this one does work with cases, but not all of them. For example, this that I have currently on my iPhone 16 Pro is too thick, but if I try to do this with my iPhone 15 Pro Max, which is a slimmer case, it works just fine. In terms of features, analog triggers, Hall effect sticks, great buttons that are membrane, feels really good. This is like a living room console quality type controller. It doesn't have all the features, mind you. It doesn't have rumble, it doesn't have gyro. Gyro, quite frankly, is not so common, so the one that we just looked at is really the exception here. You don't have gyro, but the big thing is GameSir do have their software, and where the X3 Pro, you're able to go into software and change things. When it comes to the Galileo G8, you cannot. So the controllers that lets you adjust on software when it comes to Apple that are not certified, like the X3 Pro, what they do is they send a Bluetooth signal where it's not as restrictive, and they do not have to spoof. By doing so, they're able to be captured in their software, and it lets you adjust the settings. Very clever system that a few controllers are starting to adopt. Here, you don't have a Bluetooth antenna, and therefore GameSir doesn't have any way to let you address the software on iOS. If you happen to have an Android device, you could adjust it there no problems and then bring it into iOS, but that's kind of it's a hassle to go back and forth between devices. But it's been around for some time now, so you might find one for cheap. Maybe you already have one. If so, just know that it is working just fine on your iPhone 16 Pro and Pro Max and on any iPhone 16 models. It's a great controller. It's just we're starting to see better. And talking about better, the next one, the Galileo G8 Plus, and that one is probably one of the top contenders in the entire market of telescopic controllers. It's a little heavier because this one has 2 batteries and this one runs on Bluetooth. You don't have to have the wired connection, but if you wanted, you could connect yourself with a cable here and then a cable into your phone. However, that's going to be a little complicated when it comes to just the overall stretching mechanism, but you could do that if you wanted. You have gyro and this controller. It can also work for a Nintendo Switch because it has a Switch mode. You have back paddles to remap like the Galileo G8, but this one, because it is Bluetooth, you are able to tweak it on the software on iOS, much like you are on Android, by making sure that you are connected to the Bluetooth signal of the controller. Now, you do lose the 3.5mm jack, but you do gain rumble, so it's extremely feature rich, and I've tested it in many games on iOS that do have rumble support, like Rush Rally Origins. That's usually my benchmark, and that one works just fine. It's also a good quality rotary rumble, much like what you find on the Xbox Series controller, so very reliable, great product. Honestly, this one is extremely hard to beat, and it's also extremely versatile. You can use that on smaller tablets, but you can even mod it to use it like on an iPad Pro, for example, which I've made a video on. Great option. Oh, and I almost forgot, if you want to see what it looks like with a Pro Max phone, and if you want to see what it looks like with a Pro phone. Next, we have the M Series from EasySMX, and some may know them as the Mimo S3 on AliExpress as well. It's basically the same product under a different brand. In this line of product, you have a lot of versatility, you have a lot of great options, and you have amazing value in terms of prices. So I'm just going to go over them real quick. They all have rumble. These two have Bluetooth as well. And these two also have multiple modes. They all have analog triggers. They all have USB-C charging pass-through, but none of them have the 3.5mm jack. And this one has an optional cooling fan that you can buy separately. It's not really effective, but it could help in some situations. They're extremely well balanced. You're not really missing out on anything. By the way, these two have Hall effect sticks. This one doesn't. So if that's important, you may want to skip on that one. I consider these two to be smaller form factor. Personally, I much prefer the M05. I think it's a superior controller. And this one, because you have the Bluetooth connection, even though it is a wired controller, so it needs to be connected into something at all times, but you can switch to a Bluetooth mode. And by doing that, you can tweak the controller. You can change the pulling rate, you can change the stick curve, the buttons. The software is shockingly feature rich, especially for the price point that this controller is. You can often find it for even less than $30 USD. I had some people tell me that they got it for like $18 USD. So it's extremely affordable and really reliable. I think it's probably one of the better options if you want something that is very pocketable and easy to throw in a backpack. Now this one, you're a little more limited in terms of your mode. Some people like it better because it has Hall effect sticks. I think it's a good controller. I just think there's better, if being honest. And this one tends to be a little more expensive as well. And then last but not least, the EasySMX M15. And that one, in my opinion, it's the one to beat when it comes to the EasySMX. And I would argue that this one is probably slightly better than the Galileo G8. And this one, you also have a full support in terms of your software because you're able to activate that Bluetooth mode. And once you connect into that mode, you're able to tweak the controller. You also have mechanical buttons if this is something you like. You have back paddles as well. Overall, extremely reliable product. If you're looking for something to see if that works for you, if this is something that you want to try for yourself, telescopic controller gaming, I think that's the better option. The only thing you don't have really is gyro. And in terms of case compatibility, you'll notice that the USB-C sticks out will work just fine. That is with the case. In my case, that is definitely not a ultra slim case like I have on the 15 Pro Max. This one is a little thicker, so you would likely have much better compatibility with those cases as well. Oh, and this is how it looks with the Pro. I find that it gives a nice slim look. This is what it looks like with the Pro Max. So you do have a slightly larger in height versus the controller. Still looks fine to me, but yeah, a little different. Next is the backbone one. Now I don't have the V2, which does provide a slightly longer USB-C and better compatibility with cases. That's really the only benefit from the V2 versus the V1. But as far as the buttons, the feel, I mean, it's a nice feeling controller. I do feel like in comparison to what the market offers now, it evolves, right? Because the landscape of controllers are changing, and chances are that you have owned a backbone in the past, maybe for a Lightning edition, because that's where it got very popular. And it's still a good controller, but it's starting to feel more and more cheap in comparison to many of the options that are now on market, and it's extremely overpriced for the quality that it provides. It does have the benefit of being very small form factor. If that's something you are interested in, well, that could be an appeal to again throw in a backpack. It also does have the 3.5mm jack, but if you don't mind for the 3.5mm jack, the EasySMX M05 is a drastically superior option, not even comparable, and it is a fraction of the price. It's not that it's a bad controller, it's just that it's grossly surpassed by this point in time. You know, there was a time when Backbone was the de facto controller for iPhone users. I just know that a lot of people know that name because they've heard it for so long, so that's where they will default to. Believe me, if you had the amount of controllers I have, no way would you default to that one. It's impossible. It's, again, not bad, but not great anymore at all. The 15 Pro Max, that's what it looks like, and this is what it would look like. Next we have the Scuf Nomad, and when talking about a controller that grossly surpasses the Backbone one, which by the way I forgot to mention, Backbone one doesn't have rumble, it doesn't have gyro, so if these are features you are looking for, look elsewhere. When it comes to the Scuf Nomad, you also don't have gyro, you also don't have rumble. You don't have a wired connection per se. This is a Bluetooth connection first and foremost. This is one of the controllers that I've been extremely surprised by. It feels really nice. It's a really good quality product. This one completely demolishes Backbone in terms of just the feel, the overall quality. And another massive pro for this controller is the software. You have a very good software proposition by Scuf. Also, no subscriptions, so contrary to Backbone, they're not trying to milk you for more money. You buy the controller and you're set, and all the features that comes with it. Now, there is one big con with this controller, and I kind of talked about it during my review, but I have kept testing it since because I'm working on an upcoming tier list video where I will be talking about this controller. And the big con that it has is the battery depletes itself. So if I don't keep it charged at all times, there's just no activity whatsoever. But if not for that, everything is extremely good. Very well tweaked controller. Also, one of the very few options to have symmetrical sticks. A lot of people don't necessarily like the asymmetrical, so if you want symmetrical sticks, it's one of the only options that you'll have on the market. Very good quality overall. A little pricey for what it gives considering what the market currently offers, but I could also think of this controller as one that it's easy to throw in your bag, it's reliable, it's small form factor, and it does feel really nice. Very good ergonomics. It also has this little thing here designed to not have any concerns with your camera bump. And this is what it looks like with the 15 Pro Max. So you can just slide it in like this. And as you'll notice, indeed, the camera bump is not being touched in any capacity. And when looking at the Pro, same goes. Now, the one thing also that is nice is that you're never going to have a case issue. Next on the list is a controller that, unless you are actively looking at this market, there's a very good chance that you have never heard of. A good friend of the channel, Tech Dweeb, just did a fantastic review on it. I also have my review on it. but I'm glad that TechDweeb did because he has a lot more reach, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people will get to see that video. And I would strongly encourage you to watch his and my review, and there are other many good reviews on the controller. If you have to get one, just one telescopic controller, I would urge you to hurry up and get one on the Kickstarter. From what I understand, they should be shipping around mid-October, maybe a little later, since if you are on the second batch. That controller is as close to perfection as I've ever seen so far on the market. You have a swivel connector, you have all the buttons, you have 2 mappable buttons, you have Bluetooth and wired connection. You also need to supply power for Bluetooth to work just like the other ones that have it, but still you do have that feature as well, so you are able to tweak the controller on your iOS software. You have swappable D-pads, you have Hall effect sticks, you have rumble, you have gyro, and just like the X3 Pro, this is the only other controller, to my knowledge, on the market currently that lets you remap your gyro to your stick. So you don't have to rely on the game supporting that feature. You are able to force that feature onto your games. There are no, again, to my knowledge, there are 0 other controllers that are able to do that. They're the only 2. It's also moddable for tablets. You have the 3.5mm jack. You have the USB-C pass-through. So in terms of all the features that we've talked about, the one that is the most complete at this point in time is this controller, and right now it is on Kickstarter for $59 US. So if you are on the market and you want to start with pretty much the best that the market has to offer, don't think twice, go for this one. Believe me, that is the best advice I could give you. Now, they're still tweaking things. For example, TechDweeb had an issue with his D-pad. They did say that they are tweaking things to make sure that it's as ready as can be for the final product. Overall, so reliable. I would strongly encourage anyone to go for this controller because it's so good. The Abxylute S9, by the way, that is the name. This one has probably the most protruding USB-C that I've seen. So of course it works with this phone just fine, but it also works with the iPhone 16 Pro that I have with this thicker case. I'm just pushing it in and here it is. It works perfectly fine with cases as well. You have that swivel connector, so it's great for compatibility. I can't think of something that this controller is missing. That's how good. I could tell you that I would love to have 4 paddles at some point, you know, because we haven't really seen that on the Telescopic. Oh, and by the way, it has swappable faceplates. So on the Kickstarter, they're going to be selling replacement ones. So I actually ordered the white model and I ordered the swappable faceplates. I'm going to be able to swap them to something different. Now this controller, I honestly, I could have not put it on the list. But the one reason why I think it could potentially be interesting is it has this unique feature where there's like a battery, well, not like, there's a battery inside. And as you put your phone, it can wirelessly charge your phone. So it's a very unique feature that I don't think we've ever seen any other controller do on the market. And it actually works on iPhones. I was so surprised to find that out a few weeks or 2 ago. I plugged it in to test it and I tried connecting it to my phone, my iPhone, and surprisingly, it worked. And it still does. Honestly, I wouldn't recommend that you go buy this controller at the retail price that you can potentially find it. But if you find like a stupid crazy sale on it, if it's like 70-80% off, you get it for 30 bucks, or you find someone selling one used, it's actually a very decent controller. Like in terms of feel, that was probably the first console-like controller on the market, but it didn't really move much sales. I think it was just so niche at the time. But it's actually a very nice feeling controller. And if you like the Xbox kind of feel, you are right at home. Actually, this is officially licensed by Microsoft. It was announced such a while ago. And when it was announced, I was so hyped for it, but it took so long to hit the market, like over a year, if not a year and a half. It just died down. And I think a lot of people don't know that this controller even exists, but it's actually a very decent controller. But again, I wouldn't pay the full price for it, but on a sale, yeah, totally. This is what it looks like with the iPhone 15 Pro Max. It almost looks like it's intended to be used like that. And when looking at with the 16, it works great with cases. That's another benefit that this one has because it's Bluetooth only, but contrary to the other ones, you can plug this one in and never worry about losing battery for your phone. However, there is one caveat. this is a micro USB, and this came out when USB-C was already a thing. I think that hurt this controller so much. A fairly big caveat, but again, if you can find it for cheap, I think it's still a viable option even by today's standard. It doesn't have gyro, it doesn't have rumble, by the way. The GameSir X2s. This is another great pocketable option if you want something that is kind of easy, hassle-free, just you want to throw it in your backpack kind of thing. You can't really go wrong with this one. It doesn't have a 3.5mm jack, it doesn't have rumble or gyro, but everything else it's got analog triggers. It's a great controller overall, a small form factor as well. One of the very few options to have the connector on the left. This is what it looks like with the iPhone 16. It's also not a perfect compatibility in terms of cases, but you see here I constrict it and it still works. It's arguably better than most without necessarily being as best as some of the better options like the Abxylute S9, which is definitely the better option in terms of case compatibility. Some of the other controllers that have a lip here, this one doesn't. So the benefit with not having that lip is you are more likely to have better compatibility with all types of cases, just as long as the USB-C protrudes enough, and that is the case here. And this is what it looks like with the different phones. Now that one is also spoofed as a PlayStation controller, but much like the Galileo G8, you're not able to adjust or address the settings of that controller in the software because it doesn't have any Bluetooth antenna. That's one of the options that I feel for the most part has been surpassed, but if you find it at a good price, it's a decent option, and GameSir's quality has been top-notch for the longest time, so you're also betting on a company that has a very well-proven track record. And then the last one officially that originally when I reviewed it, I didn't know, no one knew because it wasn't in the manual even, that you had different modes on this controller, and it's been marketed for an Android controller. It does have great compatibility in terms of cases because of course you don't have a connector. Now you might not have the necessary thickness, or it might have to pull on your case like it is doing here, but the thing with this controller is you can separate it. I don't think it's going to be as valuable for iPhone users as it would for Android users, but if this is for some reason something you want, maybe because you want to have a cooler in the back, that's arguably a benefit that many other controllers don't have. By default, this will not work on iPhones, but there is a secret mode that when you switch that mode, it switches to a properly spoofed Xbox mode, and in that mode you are able to connect to an iPhone and use it just as you would on an Android phone. That one you don't have rumble, you don't have gyro, by the way. That one is kind of it's such a great controller for what it's targeted for. It wouldn't be my go-to recommendation, but I think it's important that you know it exists, because it does have some unique capabilities that a lot of controllers do not have, and maybe that is something that you are specifically looking for. If that is the case, you're gonna like that one. There are a few special mentions. Now the BSPs are probably some of the cheapest, funny enough, some of the cheapest controllers you can find on the market, but their compatibility is so amazing. They all work for Android and iOS and PC, so you're able to use these controllers just fine. They all have rumble. This one has a cooler. Quite frankly, I don't use them all the time, so I kind of forget what feature they have. I have a video covering them. I would recommend that you look at this one, and they range anywhere between 30 to approximately 40 USD dollars. They also work on Switch. Here you have the PlayStation layout if this is something you're looking for. Here, this one is the D8 Pro. This is the most complete one of the bunch. In terms of features, it's really lacking nothing, honestly. And this one does have the unique cooling aspect. They're all Bluetooth, so you don't have to worry about case compatibility and all that kind of stuff. This is what this one looks like. And with the 16, they don't have 3.5mm jack or anything like that. Now this one, it seems like it's not working. That is because I have the covers in the back to not scratch a phone, but if I remove those, it would work just fine. And it's starting to look kind of weird because it's so slim on a thicker phone. By far my favorite. Like, the thing with this controller is it can compete with a lot of the very expensive and considerably superior quality controllers, but it does feel cheaper. You know, that's the one thing that if you are sensitive to that, I wouldn't want to make you believe that, oh, it feels like a Galileo G8 or a Scuf Nomad. No. You actually feel like even, and I'm talking about like even the plastic feel, it doesn't feel as much quality. The sticks are not as reliable for like your Call of Duty. It's a great option if you just like casually want to play emulators or laid back kind of gaming. I think it's a great option, but I wouldn't buy that for anything serious. And this is what it looks like on the 16 Pro. And then the last special mention is the Kishi Ultra. There is something very important because this controller has rumble. It doesn't have gyro, but it does have rumble. But the rumble doesn't seem to work on iOS. And before recording this video, I did test a few apps that I know gyro works on. Every other controller that I mentioned have gyro, and it doesn't work on this one. Why? I don't know. It's a great feeling controller in terms of ergonomics. The sticks are big. You have analog triggers, you have extra buttons at the top. Overall, it's a good quality product. You have the 3.5mm jack, the USB-C pass-through, and you do have good software from Razer. The thing is, I just cannot justify the outrageously high price tag. That's the one thing with this controller, is the price tag is so aggressive. It doesn't have a swivel connector, which is a thing I find unfortunate. In terms of case compatibility, it's also very nice. As you can see here, it fits very nicely with my 15 Pro Max, no issues whatsoever. It has that nice RGB. Not a lot of controllers have this. And then here with the 16 Pro Max, also works just fine out of the box. You don't even have to download the software if you don't want. It's just gonna work. You know, to me, that's the kind of controller that I would hope we see like a 40% off on Black Friday kind of thing. If you were to run into that and you would want to buy it then, yeah, you know, it does have a lot going for it in terms of the ergonomics and the overall quality. It does feel like quality, but at $150 it's just way overpriced for the current landscape of the market. Like, not even by a little. The Galileo G8 Plus is oftentimes found for like $80. That's double the price. Kishi Ultra, great option if expensive. And that is it, guys. Now, I do have one last thing to mention before the end of this video. I am working on a tier list that will pin every telescopic controller that I have and rate them with a system rather than just talking loosely about them. So if this is something that you're interested in, do consider subscribing to not miss that video. It's coming shortly, hopefully by the end of September. It might go into early October, we'll see. If you have any questions about any of these controllers, make sure to let me know in the comment box. I would love to help you find the right one for your needs. And as always, I love engaging with the community, so make sure to leave a comment in the comment box. Let's talk. Let's find you the best controller for your use case. Hopefully you got the information you were looking for out of this video. Do consider hitting the like if that was helpful to you in any kind of way. And I'll see you on the next one. Peace.